What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to basketball. It's draft week this week, if you guys can believe it. We're already here. Yesterday, you guys saw my official big board that I did and everything. Today, I'm giving you guys my official mock draft. This was something that you guys had requested for me to do because I'm not always sure I want to do things like trying to tell the future when it comes to mock drafts and everything. I think it's kind of a weird practice, but it's fun to do at the end of the day. So I actually spent some time last night and prepped out how I think this is going to go. Normally, I don't prep a ton for these videos. I try to just go off the cuff so you guys can see my thinking, but today I've actually got a little bit of a mock draft prepped for you guys. But hey, before we get into it, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and comment. I've responded to every single comment on my YouTube channel up to this point, and I intend to keep on doing so. But hey, a reminder on my new comment policy. If you guys got time-stamped here and you got an objection, it means that you guys were probably rude or just not collaborative in the comments. We're trying to be better than the rest of the internet here, so just please try to be collaborative and try to have good conversations. It's okay to disagree with people. Let's try to be better. All right, let's go get into the video. Alrighty, y'all, so we're here on Fanspo. Fanspo is going to help me go through my mock draft and everything. I feel like it's a good tool to kind of display it all. Going to be controlling all teams here. We're going to be going through the full draft and everything. I think we're probably just going to talk about in depth at least the first round picks, and then I'll just show you guys how the second round goes at the end of it. But for the time being, we're going to do the first round. We're going to be actually using my big board to show the rankings on it just because I think that that's more fun at the end of the day, but that's just me. Know that you guys can go and do the ESPN or the ESPN one or the Fanspo one. They're all great options at the end of the day. So what do we want to do? We want to make sure we use the NBA actual order and everything. So yeah, let's get into this. Number one pick is on the clock. So the Atlanta Hawks are here on the clock. They've been very interested in drafting Alex Sarr up to this point, but Alex Sarr has not done any workouts with them. It's been a weird situation. He's not a fan of probably going there. It sounds like he wants to go to Washington. Atlanta also, they're in a weird spot. They're like, hey, we would like to acquire more star-level talent. It sounds like they might be trying to move on from DeJounte or Trey, or maybe just put Trey alongside another star. So in this world, they've been calling the New Orleans Pelicans, being like, hey, is there some way that we can work out a trade with the number one pick, trying to get Brandon Ingram? But the Pelicans aren't picking up the phone for some reason anymore. They don't know why. Why aren't they picking up the phone? What's going on here? So they're like, shit, Alex Sarr's not picking up the phone. The Pelicans aren't picking up the phone. We got to make a selection. We're on the clock. So they go with a wing and somebody that they've had in workouts and they like. They're taking Zachary Reese-Sachet with the first pick. We now have the Washington Wizards on the clock. The Wizards are thrilled. They're like, perfect. We want Alex Sarr. Alex Sarr's our guy. We're not even getting phone calls because, well, people know that this is who we want at the end of the day. We've made it very clear. We've had him in for some workouts. He's made it very clear that this is where he wants to go. Very, very exciting times for the Wizards fans. They get a guy that maybe doesn't have a ton of star potential, but not many do in this class. That's kind of the feeling, but it's a position of need for them. They desperately need a new center. This is going to make their defense a lot better going into the season. I'm going to show this by a cap view because that just makes a little bit more sense. And we just feel good about having Alex Sarr on this team. He's instantly going to make their defense a lot better. Should be a starting center right from the beginning and should be able to be a starting center for a while in the NBA. We love drafting Alex Sarr to the Washington Wizards. The Houston Rockets are now on the clock with the third overall pick. So who exactly are they? Oh, here, one second. Hello? We've got a trade to announce. We've got some breaking news. The third overall pick is on the move in a blockbuster trade. And okay, I know I'm doing this whole kind of storytelling thing here. I'm trying to have some fun with it, all right? If you guys don't like it, then you don't like it. But anyway, let's evaluate this three-team massive trade that just went down. So this is why Brandon Ingram wasn't available. The Hawks missed out. Somebody else came in and just swooped up Brandon Ingram in a much better offer for the Pelicans. And not only that, but they've brought in the Chicago Bulls to make this trade happen because the Pelicans are still trying to be competitive. They still want to be in a state where they're competing for the playoffs. They want to bring in different caliber, borderline all-star player, Zach LaVine, if you will, here. Brandon Ingram apparently wasn't a good enough fit for him. They've been making it clear they want to trade him. And not only did they do that in this one, but they also got off the money of older and aging CJ McCollum, who was making quite a bit of money. What did they have to do that? Well, they had to move off of Trey Murphy, a guy that they liked very much, right? And that's an unfortunate thing that they have to do at the end of the day. But they've brought in a bunch of quality starter players and hopefully another star player in Zach LaVine to kind of help supplement that. So let's recap. The Rockets sent out Jae'Sean Tate, the third overall pick, and Dillon Brooks, brought in Brandon Ingram, right? Jae'Sean Tate was not somebody that they necessarily needed going forward. Was going to have to give him an extension, was not going to get a great chance to develop. He goes to the Bulls in a move where the Bulls are probably going into a rebuilding mode now that the Josh Giddey trade has taken place. So there you go with that. Dillon Brooks became obsolete once once Brandon Ingram comes in, and the third overall pick just isn't as valuable in most of these drafts. So that's part of the supplementary move to make it happen. What do the Bulls do? The Bulls take on some money because they sent out some money with Zach LaVine, right? They had to take on some money as well to make that happen. They're like, okay, CJ McCollum's on the team now. He's a good vet to have. They get younger guy Jae'Sean Tate to see what he does. Trey Murphy probably becomes a starter for them right away, and Trey Murphy gets a bigger role on a team where he's got guys like Josh Giddey helping set himself up and everything. So they're excited about that, and the Bulls move up in the draft to go get the third overall pick, and we don't know who they're targeting yet, but they clearly like somebody at 3. They're trying to rebuild now that they've gone younger and they've moved Caruso. The Pelicans, a new starting shooting guard and a guy that can go create his own shot in Zach LaVine, and maybe more of a traditional 3-level scorer than Brandon Ingram was, should give more space to Zion. They bring in Dillon Brooks, a great 3-and-D guy to have on your team, a little bit of attitude, fits New Orleans very well, and they get a new point guard in Ayo Dosunmu, who a lot of people have been saying like they want to see him get an expanded role somewhere else where he gets to be that guy, and so they get a nice young player in him. That's the trade that went down, y'all. And so just like that, the Chicago Bulls are on the clock, and they're in this weird situation now, right, where they're clearly tearing down their roster. They've got guys like Giddey on the team and Trey Murphy now. So who are they looking to move up for? It's Donovan Clingan. They want their center of the future. They feel good about this because they know that teams like the Grizzlies wanted to move up to go get Donovan Clingan, but now that they have Clingan, they feel, okay, Vucevic is available. Maybe we can call Memphis afterwards, and maybe we can deal Nikola Vucevic there or something like that. Now we've created a demand for centers, and we've got a center that we can give up now. Probably a future pick or a future trade is in the works somewhere in the offseason. By the way, this is a quick editor's note. I'm recording this on Sunday the 23rd, so if any trades have happened between now and Tuesday, then sorry, I just didn't see it at that point. But anyway, the San Antonio Spurs are on the clock at 4. The Spurs desperately tried to trade up to number 1 because they wanted Zachary Resache. They felt really good about him. They're like, that's the guy we want next to Wemby. But Atlanta was not picking up the phone. They're still not feeling good after the whole like DeJounte Murray trade that took place. The GM is feeling like, look, I can't like make a trade where it's then reminding everybody of the trade that I already did with this exact same franchise, and I kind of got screwed over. And if I go make another trade with them and I get screwed over again, my job is just like out. We can't be doing that. We can't be doing that. So the Spurs are stuck at 4. And the Spurs don't necessarily love any of the guys that they're seeing in here. They're like, we don't necessarily see a perfect fit here, and because of that, they do the Spurs thing, and they're like, we're just going to go with a culture fit at the end of the day. We love Stephon Castle's game. We think that he can develop into a solid NBA player. We're going to help him on his jump shot and everything, and we know he plays a similar position of like Devin Vassell and guys like that, but we just think we can turn him into something, and we'll figure it out later. We're going to take Stephon Castle. And here we are with the 5th pick in the NBA draft, the Detroit Pistons, who have a very young core and, excuse me. Okay, hello? Oh, shit, shut up. Little Willie fell down a well? Oh, no, the pick was traded? All right, let's go look at it. This video is so fucking weird, man. This is why I don't do any of this acting shit, and I just kind of talk about what I'm talking about. But anyway, we're trying to have fun with it. Anyway, here's the trade that's gone down. The Grizzlies, frustrated that they're not able to get the 3rd pick, have moved up because they still have somebody that they like in this class, and they want to make sure that they get a shot at them. So they are swapping places with the Detroit Pistons, and in exchange are moving on from Luke Kennard to send him over to the Pistons. The Pistons know that they don't necessarily need another young project on the team right now. They need to start winning some basketball games. So they're like, okay, we'll move back in the first round a couple picks. Not a big deal. Give us a shooter that we need on the team in Luke Kennard. He's not going to hurt our ability to go out and sign free agents anyway. We got plenty of cap space to go out and do it. But we also want to move up in the 2nd round because that means there's an increased chance of us getting a guy that can help us down the line. The Grizzlies say, sure, we'll move back in the 2nd round. Just let us go up and go get our guy at 5. So now the Memphis Grizzlies are on the clock, and, you know, they wanted their center. Their center wasn't available, but who else are they really interested in? Well, if we scroll down here, they're really interested in Matas Buzelis here. They're really interested in the prospect of adding a wing. It's another position that they desperately need on this team, a guy that can hopefully be a good 3-and-D athlete for them. While he's had some interesting moments in the G League where he maybe hasn't shown all of his potential, they enjoyed the workouts that they saw out of him. They think that they can turn turn him into something if he doesn't have to handle the ball too much early on, because they've got other guys in the team that'll have the ball a little bit more. They just really like the prospect of bringing in Matas Buzelis. Didn't have to give up a ton to go get him. They feel great about adding him to the team. Next up, with the 6th pick, we have the Charlotte Hornets. Now, the Charlotte Hornets are another team that we're trying to get up to 3. There is a guy that they really, really wanted at 3 that they were worried that the Houston Rockets were going to take at 3. But that didn't happen, and guess what? The guy that they wanted at 3 has actually fallen to them in this case. And who is that guy? I'm trying to find that guy on my list. It's actually Reed Sheppard, the guy that I have number 9 on here. They view Reed Sheppard as an interesting complementary piece to LaMelo Ball, because Reed Sheppard hasn't shown that he can create a ton off the dribble yet and be a true point guard. But here's the cool thing about LaMelo Ball is that he can guard guys of other positions. He can swap with them if necessary. So this allows Reed Sheppard to maybe play the shooting guard at the start, but maybe guard point guards earlier on when they do these rotations here. Plus, LaMelo Ball is going to be setting him up at all times. They can have Reed Sheppard running off of screens all willy-nilly, hitting threes, having great gravity. If Brandon Miller's running alongside of him, all of a sudden you have 2 really deadly catch-and-shoot guys that can really go out and do something for you. Well, maybe Charlotte's onto something here, and maybe they're building something, and that could be a really interesting move. So with the 6th pick, the Hornets are taking Reed Sheppard. We now have the Portland Trailblazers up with the 7th pick. Now, the Portland Trailblazers are looking around and being like, man, there's a couple guys that we like in this class. There are a couple guys that we really, really like. And we want to make sure that we're doing a good job of building around Scoot Henderson. We've got all these other guards on the team that we're probably trying to move during the offseason, but we're just not sure where they're fitting in quite yet. But we want to give Scoot Henderson a chance. And one of the ways that we're doing that is making sure we get spacing around him. We're making sure that we've got guys that can be lob threats and play the pick and roll with him. So we got a couple wants, but given the spot in the draft that we're in right now, Dalton Knecht seems like a nice fit. Looks like he could come into the league right away and be a really nice wing for us. We know the shooting's there. We know the offense is there. We hope the defense will develop a little bit more. He's got the athleticism to do it and to run with Scoot. We really like that fit for him. We're keeping it really simple, just going and getting a player that can help Scoot Henderson right now in Dalton Knecht. The Spurs are back on the clock at 8, and the Spurs are looking around and they're kind of thinking the same thing. They're like, we just don't really love like any of these dudes. It's like the positions that we need aren't exactly available. Topic was interesting to us, but all the injuries are a little bit scary, and the non-shooting is always a bit of a concern. And so what they're doing is they're thinking really, really safe right now. They're like, let's just go get a quality player again that we know is going to fit in with our culture, going to work his butt off, and he just so happens to be a position of need in this case, even though he may not have the most upside. But that's Devin Carter. We know he's going to hustle a bunch right away. We know he's going to be a pest on defense. He's a solid shooter going into his last season. Should be able to create off the dribble a little bit and help connect the dots with Wembanyama. So they're keeping it real simple this offseason and just going and getting guys that can help set up Victor Wembanyama. Alrighty, the Pistons are back on the clock after trading down with 5 and picking up Luke Kennard, a shooter that they very much needed. The Pistons are back on the clock, and they're like, okay, we acquired some assets here. I guess we can still go get a younger guy to kind of throw into the rotation and everything, but who exactly are we wanting to get with this? If we look at the roster that we have right now, there's not exactly like a position of need. Like, there's kind of young guys developing at each position, so we feel like we just want to add like somebody that has a little bit more of a ceiling that, if developed correctly, could really kind of be a good contributor for us. And something that they've done so far is they've had a lot of guys that can put the ball on the floor. They've got guys like that of all positions in Asar Thompson, Ivy, Cade Cunningham, right? And so they're like, maybe we want to keep that theme going, because having a team of guys that can really like rotate around each other and play multiple positions and switch everything is very, very interesting for us. So for that reason, they're looking at Cody Williams here with the 9th pick. They hope that even though he didn't shoot much, the three-point shot continues to develop over. They know it's going to take a little bit of time for him, but that's okay. They've got other guys at the position that they can develop in the meantime. They like his ability to put the ball on the floor, hopefully be a good off-ball defender eventually, but for the time being, they're just happy to take a guy that should be able to kind of fit this system that they're building of this switchable team that can put the ball on the floor. So they're taking Cody Williams. Next up on the clock, we've got the Utah Jazz with number 10. The Jazz, not too interested in trading picks. They just want to remain competitive at all times. Nobody really all that interesting is coming up right now. During the offseason, they're thinking, okay, like Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton, probably be on the move. We're trying to develop Keontae George a little bit, so maybe this is an opportunity for us to swing for the fences a little bit. We need a wing, and there's a guy named Ron Holland available for them right here at 10. Ron Holland, a lot more potential, has shown that he's very raw and needs a lot of help learning the game of basketball just because it's just not there right now. But physically, he's extremely gifted. We know he wants to go out and get his buckets and everything, and we think that we're the organization in Utah where we can really develop that in him. We can really come together and be like, hey, let's teach him everything. We got other guys that can go put the ball in the hoop for right now, but we know we need a small forward in the future, so we're going to go get Ron Holland and try to develop him. The Chicago Bulls are back on the clock after being a part of a blockbuster trade where they just sent out Zach LaVine. Alex Caruso was traded not even a week ago. Ayo Dosunmu is now gone now because they're clearing guard space. We feel like they're probably going to make some more trades down the line because, Josh Giddey is now that point guard for him. Maybe a Javon Carter is available or something like that, and who knows, maybe Kobe White's just playing off ball this year, which I personally think makes some sense. But anyway, the Bulls are back on the clock with their second lottery pick now, and we now know that they don't need a guard because Josh Giddey is here, right? And they've taken a center in Donovan Clingan that they feel really excited about. Vucevic could possibly be on the move. DeMar might not be coming back. Patrick Williams, we're not sure exactly what they're doing in free agency with him. But they're looking around and they're like, okay, we're clearly rebuilding. We're clearly trying to build something for the future. So let's start looking at the future a little bit more and go with one of the guys that has some of the higher upside in this draft, and that's Tidjane Saloon. Saloon is an interesting prospect, another French guy. There's a lot of those in this class where he's shown the ability to put the ball on the floor a little bit. He's an 11 out of 10 athlete. It looks like he's going to develop into a really big, strong guy. He's got that frame that can fill out really well. He's already got some nice bulk to him. He's shown he can hit the outside shot a little bit, but he's really young. He's pretty inexperienced, so it's going to take a little bit of time, and he'll get the chance to develop now in a rebuilding Chicago Bulls team. They go with the upside swing here with Tidjane Saloon. Oklahoma City is now on the clock with the 12th pick, and they go, shit, we really liked Saloon. We really thought that was kind of going to be our guy here. Well, we've got an interesting backup pick here because we're looking around and we're like, okay, what's the one clear thing that we need here? We need some more size on this team. We don't have the right Sarr on the team. We don't have our Alex Sarr. We've got Oliver Sarr. We've got some other interesting guys that we've kind of been supplementing the roster with, but there's nobody that can really go in there and get a rebound and really be physical with some of these other thicker bigs in the NBA. Well, there just so happens to be a guy in this draft that there's not really anybody bigger than in the NBA at this point. And that's Zach Edey. Yep, Zach Edey is moving up to the 12th pick. They go, if anything else, we're going to sell so many tickets this year because we have Chet Holmgren and Zach Edey on the same basketball team. It's a completely different look that they can give. Zach Edey can come be a backup center and just be a really interesting change of pace for a team where they're just going to come in and have all of a sudden, instead of all these really agile moving guys, now they've got their big screen setter, a smart basketball player that can pass the basketball, that can go get them some rebounds and play physical defense with all the other bigs in the NBA. Now they've got their kind of yin and yang to Chet Holmgren and him. Maybe they even find a way to play together at some point. I don't really see how that happens necessarily, but I wouldn't be surprised if they share the court at some point during the year. They pick Zach Edey. The Sacramento Kings are on the clock now with the 13th pick, and they're going oh, really? Is this guy still available? We were really hoping that this guy would be available to us, but we didn't think it would actually happen. So the Sacramento Kings are in this interesting situation where they're like, okay, we're trying to build this better team. Maybe we have to offload some of our other guys. Think like the Harrison Barnes, the Kevin Huerters, guys like that, right? It's okay, they wanted to get in on Zach LaVine. They couldn't do that. So they're like, okay, let's give us the ability to go move the assets that we have, like a Davion Mitchell or something like that. We know we've already got Malik Monk and guys like that. We've got Keon Ellis that are on the team already. And we've got some interesting forwards on the roster. But you know who we're really, really interested in is a guy named Rob Dillingham that's still on the board at this point, that has fallen, for lack of a better term, compared to most people's mock drafts. They're like, hey, we're the perfect team to develop Dillingham. We've already got a couple other Kentucky guys on the team. De'Aaron Fox came into the league, and he had to grow a lot. Coming into his first couple of years, he's going to be a great mentor figure for Dillingham, who figures to be a scoring punch off the bench for this team. They go, wow, we could really have some dynamic playmakers in at all times between Malik Monk, De'Aaron Fox, Rob Dillingham. We know he's not going to be too effective early on in his career, but that's fine. De'Aaron Fox is playing most of the minutes right now anyway, so this gives him the chance to properly develop in his first year without taking on too much pressure as a point guard coming into the NBA early. They're like, we're going to get a great upside pick here in Rob Dillingham, and we feel great about it. The Portland Trailblazers are back on the clock for the last pick of the lottery. They've already taken Dalton Connect because they're like, okay, we are so focused on getting Scoot Henderson the guys he needs to help himself develop, right? Because we put a lot of effort into getting Scoot Henderson and making sure we had a guy like this. We have to make sure we don't mess up like we did with Damian Lillard and not putting the right guys around him to succeed. We've got this other lottery pick. Who's a guy that's going to help him right away? We already kind of went with one older guy where we were like, hey, like we think that he's just going to be a good fit right away and we know he'll be a good contributor. And they're thinking that again because they are taking Tristan Da Silva with this pick. They're like, hey, another floor spacer, a guy with some size, probably is playing more of like the power forward or something like that. There's a chance that they're trying to trade Jeremy Grant in the offseason, but that doesn't mean that Da Silva necessarily comes in to start right away. But they like the option of, again, having as many floor spacing, like switch defender type guys. And even though he's not a good athlete and the ceiling's pretty, we'll say, a lot lower than some of the other prospects because of that, they just know he's going to be a good fit next to Scoot. They want to give Scoot the chance to really develop here, and they feel really good about taking Da Silva because they just know he can fit the play style with Scoot Henderson. Maybe even run some pick and pops with him and stuff like that. Could be a really interesting combo there. The Miami Heat are on the clock now with the 15th pick, and the Heat are kind of like, we're in this really weird position. They always take guys that they know are hard workers, that learn the game. They want smart basketball players, guys that are going to grind. There's not exactly like a position of need in particular for this team. They've got a pretty solid roster all the way around, and they're excited that they have this 15th pick to kind of build upon things. But there's an opportunity to kind of swing for the fences just a little bit here. The point guard position has been something that they've been trying to fill for a while. They hope Terry Rozier's kind of going to be that guy. They kind of fall off a little bit after that. DeLon Wright's not horrible. But there's a guy named Nikola Topic that is available here that's kind of a mystery man. There were points during the season where people thought Topic might be the number one overall pick, but there was just such a mystery because he was out with injury for a while. We hadn't seen a ton of film of him. The film that we had seen, we saw elite defender, big hustle guy, gets to the rim well, an elite passer, right? And a 6'5" point guard is always interesting, right? A lot of these foreign guys are coming in with really solid basketball skills and playmaking skills. So that was interesting, but obviously he went down again with an injury. They don't know how long he's going to be out this year, but the Heat are like, look, we can afford to wait a little bit. We got boys in-house right now that can take care of business. This could be a chance for us to kind of swing for the fences just a little bit. We're running out of time of being able to contend right now, and Topic might just be the pathway to getting us to that next phase and hopefully being able to contribute right away later in the year or something like that when there's not as much pressure on him to do so. So this might be the best of both worlds for them. They're taking Nikola Topic. The 76ers are now on the clock. The Sixers are in this really weird position where they basically just have like Joel Embiid and B-Ball Paul on the roster. And they're like, okay, we're trying to completely tear this thing down. We didn't get Brandon Ingram. We didn't get Zach LaVine. Like, we got to find a way to bring in some other players. We really need to get Paul George on this roster right now, and it's still kind of looking like he's going back to the Clippers. So what do? We need to find a way to get a little bit of scoring punch and a little bit more creative on offense as of right now, because we got Tyrese Maxey coming back almost for sure. That feels really good. We like that. Who's Tyrese Maxey going to play next to? Do we need to find a guy that can, like, continue to space the floor, that can also play some defense? Who is that guy? That guy is Jacoby Walter in their eyes. They're like, okay, we've been looking at Jacoby Walter, and we see a guy that can really hit some three-point shots. He's able to hit some crazy shots. He's able to contribute for himself. Definitely not a point guard. He falls in at the 2 most likely. And what's good about that is when he does want to create, we do have Tyrese Maxey who can play off ball. He's shown that he can do that. More importantly, we know Walter's going to come in and probably play good defense right away. He's a really good point of attack defender, which is a buzzword that everyone loves to throw around right now, and so they're going to be throwing that out on social media. We think that he's going to be able to come in and be a nice floor spacer around Embiid. You're going to have 2 guys with some really nice athleticism running around between him and Maxey. Could be a really nice 1-2 combo out there on the wing. They love bringing in Jacoby Walter here with the 16th pick. The Lakers are on the clock. Look at this, and there's been no trades. It's been eerily quiet. The Lakers they've called around a little bit. Nothing all that interesting to them. They've seen now that Atlanta has struck out with the trying to get Brandon Ingram thing and trying to get DeJounte Murray over there to New Orleans, and they're like, maybe we'll make a phone call at some point about old DeJounte Murray. But for the time being, they're like, okay, D'Angelo Russell's future is kind of up in the air. It's sounding like he might want to go test free agency, find a team that'll just give him a bunch of money for like 2 years or something. They've even heard the Spurs are a team that's pretty interested in him at this point. And so they're like, okay, we probably need to address the guard position a little bit more. And they're looking around and they're like, we can't take a guy that needs the ball a ton because we've got guys like Reeves and LeBron that are going to have the ball a little bit more. They're like, do we take a Bronny James here? No, they don't take a Bronny James here. But what they do like is now that they have JJ Redick as a coach, they like the ability of trying to bring in catch and shoot guys to play around them. And so who do they take with this one? They take Jared McCain, another Duke guy that JJ Redick has fallen in love with during workouts, and he's going to add him to the team. Jared McCain's struggles so far or with his college career was he wasn't always able to create for himself, but his catch and shoot numbers were really good. He feels like he can play off ball well while still guarding point guards. And so what the Lakers are thinking here is we bring in a guy like Jared McCain. He's going to make so much money off his social media being in LA. Good for him in that case. And we just think that he's going to be a nice complementary piece to like LeBron and like Reeves, so that we still have somebody that can guard the point guards here in McCain, but he doesn't need the basketball to succeed. He's probably better without it as of right now. He can work on it in his time in LA, but he's just a nice supporting piece to have around the other good players that they have right now. The Orlando Magic are now on the clock with the 18th overall pick. The Magic have been looking around. They're like, yeah, we've got all these interesting kind of young pieces in already. And we're like, oh, it's happening again. It's happening again. Hello? Yes, please bring my DoorDash up here. I'm really hungry right now. But there's a trade as well. All right, I'll let them know. And just like that, we've got a pretty interesting, I wouldn't call it a blockbuster trade, but we've got a very interesting trade going on here. The Orlando Magic looking around and they're like, we really don't need another project on this team, and we had some success this year, a little bit earlier than expected. Let's go fill a hole that we need at point guard. And who better than Anthony Simons, a guy that's an Orlando native. He wants to come home, one of the few guys that probably wants to play in Orlando at the end of the day. And he's just a good complementary piece. This team's been missing a guy that can just go get his own shots. Anthony Simons can go do that for them. He's on a pretty friendly deal considering his age and everything. And he's on the timeline with everyone else. So like, okay, we get a three-point shooter at point guard. This is awesome. This guy converts from three pretty easily. He can initiate offense. While he hasn't been the greatest defender at all times, it's like, okay, now we're bringing him into a defensive system where we have other defensive guys kind of supplementing him. Hopefully we can make something out of that there. But they're like, we just don't need this pick anymore. And what do the Blazers get out of this? They get a Cole Anthony, who's another young guy that while he maybe doesn't fit their needs right away, he's somebody that can come in and play it if necessary. They're probably going to try to move Brogdon during the offseason as well. That's something that they've been discussing quite a bit. And so they're like, we'll take on Cole Anthony for now. We have one other guy that we really, really liked in this draft that we just feel like we weren't able to take with the 14th pick because we're like, we want De Silva a little bit more, but there's one more guy we want to walk away with in this class. And we get a 2025 pick that Orlando's like, look, we're getting our young point guard for the future. And this one with Simons, he's a great fit with our guy. We're okay with giving up this pick right now. We've got enough young projects on the team already now anyway. And so with that being said, the Trailblazers are back on the clock. And everyone's like, whoa, they already got two guys to put around Scoot. They're like, they must really like somebody else that's still on the board. And they do. They're like, hey, we acknowledge DeAndre Ayton. Not the best fit around him. We need to start thinking for the future. Like Klingon wasn't someone that we felt like we could really go up and get. We weren't in love with that fit. Who we are interested in getting is Kel Ware here at the 18th pick, a guy that has somewhat been connected to every single team in this mock or in the draft because he's a guy that can do a bit of everything. He's athletic, blocks shots, gets rebounds, can score in the paint a little bit, can step out and hit some three-pointers. People just think that he's going to need a couple years to get used to the NBA, and then he might be a starting caliber center. But the point is you're getting a guy that can run, jump, and dunk, and that can play off of Scoot Henderson and not operate in his operating space. Kel Ware gets a guy that can hopefully set him up for a lot of alley-oops and pick and pops and things like that. There's other shooters on the team now in Connect, in De Silva. The Trailblazers are like, okay, we're walking out of this class with literally all three guys that we really, really wanted to get out of it. The Toronto Raptors are now on the clock with the 19th overall pick, and the Raptors are in a really weird situation where they're like, we're not quite sure what we're trying to build here. Like, we're not trying to do like a complete rebuild or anything like that, so we're not exactly sure what's going on. But they're like, we know we've got good players in Scotty Barnes, and, you know, let's just put stats up. What are these views? I don't understand, like, what these depth chart views are. But anyway, they're like, we got Scotty Barnes. He's really interesting. We got guys like RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley that are kind of cool. We've got guys at center like Jakob Pertl and Kelly Olynyk. Kind of want to keep them around. If for the right offer, we might move them. So let's just go kind of find a player that we don't really have right now. And, they're looking around, saying like, hey, who's all that interesting to us? And somebody they land on is Carlton Carrington. Carlton Carrington is kind of a guy that they don't quite have on this roster. He's a guy that was a pretty solid overall defender going into Pitt at the point guard. He's got some good size at 6'3", almost 200 pounds coming in. Had some good playmaking skills, didn't have great playmaking skills, missed some of the easy ones, but he's a little bit younger. He's definitely more of a, hey, let me have a good, quick first step and try to make a move. Jump shot's not quite there yet, but they figure he can come in and be a backup point guard, be more of a facilitator on the team, give him a chance to develop around some other backup guards. He's a guard that they don't quite have on this team in a role like that. So they're like, let's give a shot to Carrington here, kind of bolster our point guard position a little bit more. They don't really want to go for another guard because they're hoping Grady Dick can kind of fill in at that 2-guard spot. Bruce Brown's probably on the move at some point, so they feel good about Carrington. The Cleveland Cavaliers are now on the clock with the 20th overall pick, and they're looking around, and they haven't made any deals yet. They've stuck firm with Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, guys like that. They contemplated moving up into the lottery, sending Garland over to the Spurs for maybe their 2 lottery picks, but it just didn't quite fall through. They're like, there's not really a particular guy that we want with those picks or guys that we want with those picks. So for the time being, we still have the roster that we have. And they're looking around and they're like, yeah, we could use another center on the team. Not maybe one that we want necessarily with this pick. We'd probably rather just go get another wing that can try to be another floor spacer for us. But they also have an idea that they're like, hey, we've got a couple of good ball handlers on the team already. They're like, what if we added another connecting piece to have another ball handler? We don't know if Karis LeVert's going to be on the roster going forward. Maybe we end up trading him at some point to go get somebody of a better positional need that we need. Maybe he's part of a bigger trade to get a star in some capacity, but we want to make sure we have a wing like that, and it'd be nice if they can shoot a little bit. And there just so happens to be a guy named Keyshawn George that can do a little bit of all that. Keyshawn George was a guy that shot pretty well from 3. He's a 6'7" wing that was able to put the ball on the floor a little bit. While it wasn't the most impressive skills you've ever seen, he still created space for himself, so the potential is there at the end of the day. And so they're like, yeah, no, that could be an interesting connecting piece for us. And hey, if we do end up moving on from one of the point guards, then we have maybe our secondary ball handler of the future on the team. So they feel good about bringing in Keyshawn George. The New Orleans Pelicans are on the clock with the 21st pick. They're looking around at their roster right now. They've just moved Brandon Ingram. They've brought in Zach LaVine. They brought in Ayo Dosunmu. CJ McCollum is gone, and they're like, hey, we've got guys like Dylan Brooks on the team now too. We don't really need a wing. We're looking and trying to figure out what the center position is going to be going forward, because that's a big if for us. It doesn't sound like Valanciunas is coming back. We have Larry Nance on the roster, which isn't bad next to guys like Zion necessarily, but we're still going to need some size at some point and some shot blocking and things like that. So like, hey, let's just go with the fit here more than anything else. We're looking at Yves Missy here, and we're like, hey, run, jump, and dunk kind of guy, can block some shots, doesn't have to do a whole bunch for us, just kind of play a Clint Capella type role. Who knows, maybe because of all the other guys we have on this team, he's going to maybe excel in his role a little bit more, kind of Derek Lively-esque. So they feel good about bringing in Yves Missy here and just kind of being that backup center for him. The Phoenix Suns are now on the clock with the 22nd overall pick, and they're looking around and they're like, man, we are in a weird situation. We got to do something. Oh, okay, here it is. Hello. I'm not going to do some joke with all this. There's a trade to announce, though. And here is the trade that we just heard about. Very interesting move by the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns are like, okay, we need some more depth on this team. We need to split up some of these contracts that we got going on. How can we do it? There's only a couple guys that we can realistically trade on this team. Grayson Allen was so good for us. We don't want to move him. Yusuf Nurkic was good for us this year too, but he might just have to be the guy to go, and this is also a way for them to combine Nasir Little into the trade. So here's the logic. It all starts out with the Charlotte Hornets being a little bit curious because they're like, hey, there's a guy that we want on the board at 22. We already got Reed Shepherd in the first round, but we're clearly kind of in this rebuilding. We've got this new kind of ownership coming in, new front office. The Charlotte Hornets are trying to be better, right? They know that they've been kind of a laughing stock in the NBA for a while. People don't develop with them. They're like, hey, we're trying to get the right guys in the right places right now, and we've got a guy that we really are interested in. We also want to get some more kind of like win now players to help LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller and hopefully Reed Shepherd at this point. So they're like, we'll take Nurkic. We'd like to have a new center. Mark Williams is coming off injury, and we hope he's the future for us, but he's coming off a big injury where he's a real athletic guy. So let's bring him in. And the Suns are like, look, We're willing to give you Nurkic and everything. We'll give you this first round pick. You got to take Nasir Little off our hands too, because he's just not contributing enough for us. We don't want to pay him this money. Take Nasir Little for us. The Hornets go, okay, and we'll give you guys the role players that you guys are looking for. You guys are trying to split up these contracts into cheaper and cheaper options. We totally understand, right? You're trying to get some more depth on a team that already has all the star power that it could ever ask for, right? And so they're like, okay, you can have Grant Williams. We're not that interested in him. He can play kind of a stretch four, big for you. We're giving you Nick Richards. We're giving you a new starting center. A guy that some people have thought could be a starting center in the NBA, me in particular. He's going to get rebounds for you. He's going to block shots. He's going to be a lob threat. Like, he's going to do the basic things for you. Doesn't have to do a ton else, and he's really, really cheap for the next couple of years. That's awesome. We'll also give you a point guard that had some really quality playmaking, because we saw last year that the Suns really struggled with playmaking. And they're like, hey, we'll give you Micic. We've already got LaMelo. We got Reed Shepherd. Trey Mann is a guy that showed us some stuff last year after the deadline. You can have Micic. There you go. You get a point guard to finally throw on your roster somehow. He doesn't even have to start. He's just an option for you guys. And now the Suns have a little bit more depth, and the Hornets can go draft the guy they want, and they get a new starting center. There's like a glitch on Fanspo for whatever reason, like the Hornets like aren't showing up as an option here. So I'm basically just moving this pick around, trying to find where like the Charlotte Hornets are. So now I can finally trade it here. So whatever. There we go. Now the Charlotte Hornets are on the clock with the 22nd pick, and they're like, hey, who are they kind of interested in? And they're like, hey, we're swinging for the fences on a couple things here today. There's another guy that we think could fill in as a positional need, because they're like, okay, we got our point guard, we got our 2, hopefully, in Reed Shepherd. Brandon Miller's our 3. We feel good about that. Mark Williams and Nurkic are holding down the 5. Who's going to play our 4 in the future? Who's a guy that could be an interesting, dynamic guy to play off the guys that we already have at this point? And it's Tyler Smith, a guy that a lot of people have looked at and they're like, there's a lot of potential with this guy. He was able to put up the 3 ball a little bit. He could put the ball on the floor to some extent. Some people have thought he can play the small forward. He probably comes in to play the power forward at first. But he's another guy that can operate without the basketball, let LaMelo run the show. Hopefully, eventually, Reed Shepherd kind of can. And just another like big, athletic, lengthy dude that you can throw on this team. And you've got a really cool thing going on now. Milwaukee Bucks with the 23rd overall pick are on the clock. The Bucks are looking around and they're like, okay, we have an interesting opportunity here where we can maybe go get a guy to try to help us get back into contention, right? Lillard was obviously had his moments for us this year. Middleton's getting older. You know, we're looking at like Pat Connaughton has kind of had a couple rough years in a row. Beauchamp hasn't quite become something. Andre Jackson Jr. hopefully is, but Malik Beasley might be gone. We could probably use a wing that can pack a little bit of a scoring punch. And there's a certain guy left that has shown that he can score with just about anybody in this draft class, but because of some off-the-court issues, has found himself falling down in a lot of mock drafts, but he was recently found innocent. And so teams are like, hey, the right culture, this guy might just be fire, and that's Terrence Shannon Jr. here. Terrence Shannon Jr. can do just about everything: defend, play make. He's a crazy good athlete. He can shoot from the outside. One of the better college players this season, but again, some off-the-court stuff kind of helped him fall down in the draft a little bit. The Bucks are like, look, you don't find a much better culture than like Doc Rivers and like Giannis, Brook Lopez, Chris Middleton, like Lillard. They're not going to let something like this happen to this guy. They're going to look at him and be like, this guy could very well work his way into a starting 2, like already for us, is like another guy that can just go out and get some buckets. And they've got all these other guys paying attention, or they've got all these other guys in the team that require so much attention from other players that Terrence Shannon Jr. might be able to just go off right away. They feel great about getting a value pick here in Terrence Shannon. The New York Knicks are now on the clock, and they actually have the next 2 picks. They're looking at this, and they're like, well, most of our rotation is kind of set. We might trade Mitchell Robinson at some point because we'd like to bring Hartenstein back, but we'll see about that because the Thunder, we're not as worried about them now. They went and got Edey, so maybe they're not going to go spend on a Hartenstein or something like that. So they're like, okay, what are some guys that we just think are going to fit our team really well? Well, they're looking around, and they see 2 guys that they know are going to bring some good hustle. They're going to be good athletes, probably be good defenders and smart basketball players, and those are Ryan Dunn and Deron Holmes here. Ryan Dunn becomes a guy that can play without the basketball. If he was a decent enough three-point shooter, he'd go a lot higher in the draft, but for the time being, really good cutter off ball. He's insurance in case something happens to OG Anunoby at some point. They feel good about him. Deron Holmes is there for when Jalen Brunson starts to get blitzed or something like that, he's a good guy you can hit for a pocket pass, and he can kind of start to create. You know he's going to crash the glass. You know he's going to be a good rebound guy, and all his athleticism, you just feel like, hey, maybe we can move Mitchell Robinson because he can come in and kind of be a bit of a smaller center, but that can still crash the glass with guys like Josh Hart and everything. We feel like that'll be enough of a presence. So we're taking those two guys with those picks. The Washington Wizards are back up on the clock, and they're like, okay, we got Alex Sarr, which is cool. We got our starting center. We're looking around now, and they're like, okay, what's the next position of need? And it's pretty clearly the point guard. They've got like their 2 through 3 or their 2 through 4 pretty well figured out. They obviously went and got the center already. So like, okay, let's start thinking about point guard a little bit more. And they're looking around at who's left, and they're like, hey, like, I guess we could kind of take a swing here if we wanted to. There is a guy that was at one point looked at as one of the higher ranked guards in the class. At some points, he was even considered possibly a number 1 pick, but just through a lot of inconsistent play, some size falling off, the lack of ability to shoot, he's fallen a little bit, but he's an incredibly interesting athletic prospect, and that's Isaiah Collier. They figure, hey, look, we're clearly not going to be that good this year anyway. Let's at least go get a guy with some upside like this that we can bring in. Hopefully will at least be a good defender early on in his rookie career. We hope that he doesn't have to be the starting point guard for us. We're going to try to find another point guard. Maybe it's Jordan Poole this year. We don't know. We just like the chance to take a swing at the fences a little bit here with a later first-round pick. Why not? We already got our guy at 2. Let's go take a chance on Collier. Minnesota Timberwolves are on the clock with the 27th pick. After shocking most of the world this year, Anthony Edwards has become that dude, and Cat and Gobert figured out how to play with each other to some extent. And they made a really deep run this year, and now they're looking around and going, okay, so now how do we add to this? Well, the pretty easy answer is they need to add some wings, they need to add some shooters and guys like that. So they're like, okay, let's look around and try to find some shooters. There's a couple left on the board here. One of those being Johnny Furphy. They look at Johnny Furphy and they go, wow, yeah, that looks like a Minnesotan right there, doesn't it? He looks like a hockey player for like the Wild or something like that. This will be a perfect fit for us. But no, more importantly, Furphy might be the best shooter in this class. He's shown some really interesting athletic moments as an off-ball guard. So they're like, hey, like, what can we do with this guy if we don't make him like put the ball on the floor too much? He's just kind of a spacer at the end of the day. We know that the Timberwolves, if they can hit 3-point shots, their defense is good enough to win you games as long as you can maintain that 3-point shooting. So they're like, hey, Furphy makes sense. Fits the culture well, most likely. We've shown that he has a ton of energy. Like, he'll go out and really guard people defensively, and we love that in him. And again, he looks like your everyday Minnesotan, so we know he's not going to get in trouble getting into the clubs because he's going to look like every other Minnesotan anyway, so we love Furphy. Denver Nuggets are on the clock now, and they're like, okay, we need to find some bench. We know our starting 5 is legit. We know they're really good. Christian Brown, hopefully, will be a guy for us. Like, Reggie Jackson's still on the team. They're looking around and they're like, okay, we could really use like some backup big help because really outside of Jokic, we just didn't have any help this year. So they're looking around and they see, hey, there's still one big available. That really the question with a guy like Filipowski was his toughness, right? Well, we think we can toughen him up in Denver a little bit, right? Like, he's going to be going against the best every day, and honestly, a guy that Filipowski should strive to be, right? Maybe not the best athlete in the world, but a smart basketball player that can step outside and hit some shots. He's got some size to him, so the Nuggets look at this and they go, hey, nice solid backup center to bring in right away. Should be a smart player. Maybe he can even play next to Jokic at points if he's a good enough shooter in his rookie season. It'd be kind of weird to have 2 guys that unathletic out there, but who knows? Maybe they try it. But anyway, Filipowski added to the team. They feel good about adding a little bit of depth at a position where it's hard to find guys right now. Jazz are back on the clock with their second pick of the first round. As a quick recap, they took Ron Holland and swung for the fence a little bit more on a position that they really needed because they need wings, and we all know that they need that. And so they're thinking, okay, you know what, let's try and hit the wing again because we've got guys of the forward position and the guard position we're trying to develop anyway. So let's look around and see what's available. And what do we see? We see another Frenchman in this class, and that's Pacome Dadier. And what they're seeing out of him is a guy that's really, really raw. He's going to take some time to develop, so he needs the good culture. The Utah's got that culture, right? They try to win. They usually end up developing their talent pretty solidly. So they're like, okay, we can take on a Dadier. What is he going to be eventually? Well, we hope that he's a lengthy wing that can pass the ball a little bit, solid athlete, really, really good shooter. So we hope we get a 3-and-D like defender out of him that's smart, can play without the basketball, can contribute. When we have guys like Keontae George that maybe aren't as traditional of point guards on the team, he can kind of help keep the offense moving in some capacity. We like Dadier with this pick, and that's where they're going. And finally, the 30th pick in the first round. The Celtics have contemplated trading this pick for maybe a couple seconds or something like that because they want to put their assets down, but my phone isn't ringing. Nothing's happening right now. My hands are here. So they're looking at somebody with this pick, and they're kind of looking around, and they're like, all right, where do we want to add a little bit of depth? We feel pretty good at the point guard spot between like Springer, Pritchard, Drew Holiday. They feel probably pretty good at center. They'll have Porzingis, Al Horford. They're probably going to bring guys like Kata back and maybe Xavier Tillman. So like, okay, maybe we go check out a wing. And what do we not have as like reserve wings? What we don't really have is like a defender reserve wing. Like Jordan Walsh, we're not so sure about it yet. But there is an interesting guy that's kind of fallen in this class because of injuries, and that's Kevin McCullough. McCullough was a really nice defensive player for Kansas this year that had a really solid build to him. He was able to get to the hoop pretty well. Was, we'll say, an okay three-point shooter, not anything crazy by any means, but we're like, hey, this guy, should we need him right away, and if he's healthy, should be able to come in and play really good defense for us, hopefully be a floor spacer, be a guy that can attack the rim and not be afraid to move around the court when necessary. He's extremely smart, and while he only really had like one super productive year in college, we think that on a team with all these other great players, he'll be able to contribute just fine. The Celtics are taking with the last pick of the first round, Kevin McCullough. And there you have the first round and actually the second round here. I'm scrolling through this just a little bit for you guys to see. Kind of an interesting thing at the end of the day, just kind of went through and maybe didn't put like a ton of time into my second round thoughts, but just some interesting options here, if nothing else, that I figured I'd display with you guys. But here's a recap of the first round. I tried to have some fun with this, y'all. Like, I'm not going to typically do videos like this at the end of the day. I tried to have a little bit of fun with it. I had a lot of people in my Discord really request that I do it, and so I'm like, okay, I'm doing this one more so for you guys in the audience anyway, so hopefully you guys had some fun playing imaginary draft with me. I think I'll do a video at some point comparing what I thought would happen to what actually happened, and I don't expect to get like any of this right. I presume that maybe like these first two picks will go that way, but everything after that, I mean, who knows? I tried to make things that are somewhat realistic, but also kind of fun at the same time, so I guess we'll see. But hey, you guys let me know what you guys think is going to happen in the draft and everything. I'm not going to do a live stream like a lot of people have asked. I don't know a great way to really do that and still make it entertaining. I might do it next year. I don't know. I'll think about it, but you guys know I'll be giving you draft coverage like as it happens. We'll be talking about it the very next day and everything, and obviously it's a 2-day draft, so we'll be discussing. Hopefully there's some fun trades that happen in it that we can talk about, but until then, I appreciate you guys as always, and we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.